Much of our runtime expression relies on random number generation through the rand function. At this point in effect development, I want to make sure my random calls are reproducible, so I'm going to add an expression that contains a call to the seed function. This function, when provided with a single integer argument, forces the rand function to generate the same numbers every time the scene is played, which results in a reproducible simulation. I'm going to create a regular expression which doesn't have to be attached to anything in my scene. This call to the seed function only evaluates if the current frame is set to the particle shape's start frame attribute. Our drop particle's shape name is dp, and its start frame attribute is set to 1. I'm calling the seed function with an integer value of 10, which is just an arbitrary number. I could also experiment with other numbers and see if I get a more interesting result. If I find a simulation that looks significantly better than another, I can be sure it's reproducible now that I've set the random seed of the scene. You can learn more about the seed function in Chapter 10. This shot is a good example of how a simple technique can be expanded upon to create an elaborate, physically accurate simulation. There are many ways to take this effect further. 1. We could set up a relationship between the pause count and the radius of each drop particle, so as it slides down the can, its radius decreases as it's leaving its volume of water behind. Conversely, when the particle pauses, its volume would grow as its water trail catches up with it. 2. We could drive the movement of the particle based on its volume of water. We could pre-generate water trails, determine their distances from the main drop, and calculate its movement towards the ground based on how many particles are contained in one certain spot. 3. We could also have the drop roll off and detach from the bottom of the can onto the ledge geometry. We could achieve this by detecting each particle's position relative to the bottom of the can, emit another particle at that point that is gold to the ledge, and kill off the original drop particle. We could then move this drop around with fields or goals. Rendering the water trails will be fairly easy. Fortunately, we can treat blobby particle types as regular surfaces, so we're able to ray trace them using refractions and reflections. If ray tracing is not an option, a reflection map should prove to be sufficient. Finding a perfect balance between the particle's threshold, radius, and density attributes will require a little tweaking, but that's one of the reasons we brought all these controls to the node level. In order to control how high the blobs sit on the surface of the can, I can simply change the scale of the can. Thanks to the goal relationships between the particles and the geometry we set up, I'm free to change the shape or size of the can, maintaining my original simulation. Before scaling, make sure to duplicate the original can and use it for rendering. Also, rendering the can separately, then rendering the particles with the can's alpha set to black hole allows for a simple composite.